Hello, this is Andrew Jobling, the Accidental Author. Welcome to another wonderful video cast with a fantastic author. And this month we're speaking to Bob De Pasquale. Bob, hello.
Andrew, how are you, my friend?
I am exceptionally well. Good to see you,
That's
mate.
great.
Thanks for being here.
That's awesome. I'm pumped to talk to you a little bit about writing this time. You know, I would almost call myself an accidental author also. Here I am though. So
Isn't it funny? I think a lot of authors probably stumble their way into their first book, because it's probably less about wanting to write a book and more about wanting to get a message out to the world. And writing a book is
yep,
such a good way to do it, isn't it? I mean, it's just such a powerful way to reach people you'll never ever reach and probably never ever meet, and will do so
absolutely.
for many years after you're gone. I mean, what gets any better than that? As far as I'm concerned, I reckon it's awesome.
What a cool way to get your message out, and it'll never go anywhere, right? It'll always be there, and
Always.
especially with digital technology these days, it's not like your book's getting lost. So your words
Exactly.
are your words are bonded
Well,
forever.
even how many authors way before digital technology, and there are books out there that have been around for centuries. I mean, the Bible. I mean, look at the Bible as a starting point. My gosh, there's a book that's just keeps going and will go for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So it's a pretty exciting stuff. Now, mate, you and I did a podcast that, if people are listening to this as I launch this, the podcast isn't launched yet, but it will be out very soon. So stay tuned to hear Bob and I on podcast, because Bob, you've got an amazing story, mate. You've been through a lot of stuff, and we won't go into your story. People will have to listen to your podcast to hear your story, but you've got a financial background. Well, you've got a journalism background. You've also got a financial background.
Mhm.
You've also been through some pretty serious trauma and challenges in your life. At the age of 18, diagnosed with cancer a few days before 9/11, and you were in New York at the time. So, mate, you've had a few challenges, haven't you?
I certainly have, and that's why when I dove into writing a book, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about this, that it wasn't as hard as maybe I thought it would have been, or it wasn't. I was a little bit more willing to dive in because I've been through some tough things, and it was just another challenge on the list, I guess.
Yeah. So, Bob, your book is called Personal Finance in a Public World. Let's just start there. Let's just spend a bit of time on the book. What's the main premise? What's the main message in your book?
So you mentioned my finance and my journalism background. In working in the financial world for 13 years now, and 12 years at the point that I started writing the book, I had realized that quite a bit of people had what I would call money stress, or
Still do.
possession stress, right? And I've determined that it wasn't just because money is just stressful in general. It's not owning things is not this. It shouldn't be the reason why we struggle. Why there's divorce, and why people are having arguments with their family, and why they can't. They're uncomfortable at work. It's not just money. There's something else going on there. And what I realized is that this overstimulation of today's social media and the ad space and retargeting ads, and the way that we're shown or told that we need more, that we need to buy more stuff. It's about the stuff, not necessarily the money. I realized that was a main source of stress in just talking with thousands of families over the years. So the main premise of the book is that we should be able to use technology in a positive way in our lives. And I believe strongly that we're capable of doing that. The research that I did suggests that technology can be a very, very strong positive force in our life from a financial perspective, which unfortunately I think gets a bad rap these days. I think technology is very, very criticized, and in some cases that's accurate. But I do believe it's a powerful force for positivity, and so can your money.
Yeah.
And I wanted to write something so that families and people just could have a better relationship with their finances.
That's awesome, mate. I mean, technology is not the problem, is it? It's how we use technology that can be the issue. And it's the same with money. I mean, we blame money for, people blame money for that's the problem in the world. It's not the money that's the problem. It's what we do with it, or how we use it, or how we chase it, or what we do to get it is the problem.
Exactly.
So it's all mindset, really, isn't it? It's all focus, perspective, belief systems, a whole range of stuff. So it's a complex issue, money, so I'm sure it's an amazing book. I'm going to have to get myself a copy of it, because money's an important point for everyone. And I know people watching this, as you know, Bob, are aspiring authors, are people looking to really create some success, and part of that success they want to know is financial. I mean, I know when I decided to write a book, a big part of the reason for me was the first reason was to impact lives, but the second reason was I want to make money. I wanted to get out of debt. I wanted to have freedom. I wanted to have choices. So money's I think a big motivator for a lot of people, and that's okay. I think people feel almost guilty about having money as a motivating factor. I don't think they need to feel guilty at all. We want to be free, financially strong. We want to have choices and options, and money can give us that. So I think I think it sounds like a great book, and we'll talk about how people can get their hands on that at the end, mate. But tell us a bit about, because you mentioned you are also an accidental author. Tell us a bit how the evolution of you deciding to write a book and then becoming an author. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So having mentioned my journalism background, I'm a very curious person. So I had these questions about finances and stress, and I wanted to have better answers than just anecdotal evidence of me talking with people. That was very helpful, and it developed a great hypothesis, but I wanted to be a little bit more formal. And in my previous role, before my business partner and I opened our own firm, we had some restrictions when it came to doing media, whether it was a podcast like this or radio, television, whatever it was. I really couldn't scratch that journalistic itch that I always had. So I dove right into being a little investigative, if you will, when we had left our company. And I reached out to some publishers, and I was telling you this before.
Yeah.
I sent an email to them, and I did not expect. I was like, okay, I haven't been in this game in over a decade. No one's going to answer me. A couple of them actually got back to me, and one of them specifically said, "It's a great idea. How far along are you in your rough draft manuscript?" And I told him, "What manuscript? I don't even know what that is. Like, what does that word even mean? I don't even remember." And so they explained to me, in an email, and said, "Hey, you need to speak with a gentleman that can maybe put you in this cohort of people that'll help you work through writing a manuscript and understanding how to do that." And I jumped right in. I was asked to get on a Zoom call with the guy a couple days later, and it was I'll never forget this, Andrew. It was at 10 a.m. and he told me all this great stuff. He sold me on the process. Like, "Oh, this is awesome. I can't wait to do this." And he's like, "Well, I got to know for sure in 2 hours because we start at noon." And I was like, "What? We start in 2 hours?" And to be honest with you, I was really stressed at the time because of all the work I was doing to start my new company, that if I would have had any longer than 2 hours, if I would have had 2 days or 2 weeks, I probably would have said no.
You would have talked yourself out of it. And Bob, I think it's
Yep.
worth stopping there, because this is a key point. You were given this deadline, you were given this time frame, which you had to make a decision. And obviously there was a strong emotional feeling of strong desire. There's probably excitement, anticipation to do it, because you spoke to this guy and you thought, yeah, this could be the thing for me. 2 hours. Oh, I don't want to miss it. Yes. So you acted probably more on the emotion in that moment, right? The feeling. Whereas
Yeah,
what
you
happens
got
for
it.
a lot of people, when you have more time to think about it, let me think about it. That's a big mistake. And a lot of people watching this will go, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Overthinking things and coming up with all the reasons why it won't work, why you don't have time, why it's not the right time, why it's inconvenient, why you don't have the skills, the abilities, all that sort of stuff. The more time people have, the more chances that they will talk themselves out of it. So I think straight away, mate, that's a massively important message, that you act on emotion. You get out of your head and into your heart is a great saying that I love to work with, because danger happens up here. It's a very dangerous place to spend too much time. Get into your heart
Oh,
and
yeah.
get going. And that's what you did. 2 hours later, you're on a Zoom call. So, mate, what happened from there?
Yeah. So I got on the Zoom call, and I had a great time in the first class, if you will, meeting some other first-time authors, and it was just really exciting. And I just capitalized on the momentum. I think Eric, the gentleman I was speaking with, capitalized on the deadline, like you're talking about. Super valuable. Great point for people looking to write a book, or people who have just written a book or looking to make updates. Like, a deadline is a really powerful thing. He capitalized on that, and then I capitalized on the momentum. Once I signed up, I mean, it was exciting. It really is when you have a great idea, or you think you have a great idea, working through that process, envisioning it out and laying it out, that was probably the most exciting part of writing the book. So yeah, I capitalized right away, dove right in, and started doing what they told me to do, and doing research, and getting even deep, getting really the scientific with my thoughts rather than just anecdotal.
Yeah, that's awesome, mate. So you wrote the book, clearly, and got it traditionally published? You've got a traditional publisher. Is that how? So those
Yeah, so
publishers that showed some interest in the initial stages, it was one of those that ended up publishing the book.
yeah, so it's what you would call a hybrid publisher.
Okay, a
So they're
lot
a
of those out there at the moment.
full scale publishing house, and but they didn't pay me in advance or anything to write the book. I had to do the work on the upfront. They coach you right through it
They
though, so
don't
it
they
was,
don't pay advances anymore, mate, unless you're a
yeah.
pretty well established author.
Exactly. And so it was a great fit for me because I learned about the process while also doing it. I don't even think I don't think a traditional publisher would have been a good fit because I wanted to learn about the process too. I wanted to understand it.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. So now, it's only been recently published, right? When was it published?
It was published in December of 21. So that's
Oh,
7, 8
okay.
months ago now.
Well,
That's
as
that
you
was
and I are
the
chatting now, just for people to know, it's sort of the end of August 2022. So yeah, that's about 9 months ago. Tell us, mate, what's happened since it's that in those 9 months? Tell us some of the activity. What are some of the great things that have happened as a result of the book being out there into the world?
Yeah, well, the first thing is just the joy of seeing your own book published. So my
Yeah,
soft cover and the ebook were published in December of last year, and it was an amazing feeling. You get an overwhelming amount of support from the people around you, and then the other thing, I mentioned when I was writing the book, thinking, man, I have some thoughts that I want to get out here, and a big part of the reason why I wrote the book was because I knew that I wouldn't be able to speak with as many people as I'd like to get that message,
yeah,
especially with my transition in business, the way that we were doing our new business model, we were not going to be serving nearly as many people.
yeah,
So there were questions and things that I had to get out there to all these people that I knew needed it. And when you publish a book and you see it on some of the major platforms, and you see people purchasing it or pre-ordering it or posting on social media about it, it's a really, really powerful thing. So there was some great support. Not to mention, getting revenue from selling a book is a great feeling too. You feel like you're helping the world get better. People are willing to pay for something that you've written is awesome. And then the other thing is to point out, I'm currently in the process of working on my hard copy and the audiobook. So there's just a lot of things going on. It's almost never ending in a really good way. It's kept it top of mind. I've continued to work on the book. It's not like I just wrote everything and put a pen down and haven't thought about it in a year. It's a
yep.
pretty active process.
That's awesome, mate. So tell what would be a couple of hints and tips you'd give to people watching this, and keeping in mind they're at different stages. I mean, someone watching this might be at the very early stage of
Mhm.
starting to write the book. There'll be people at the other end of the spectrum that are published and now going, okay, well, how do I make this work? How do I see some of that revenue come through? What would be a couple of very simple hints and tips you'd give people?
Sure. The first one, if you're a pre, you haven't written or you're working on your manuscript or you're in that very, very early stage, I would absolutely capitalize on the momentum like I did. I mean, that was huge for me. Speak with other people who are writing at a similar stage and writing a book as you. Speak with people who are maybe a little bit ahead as well, but really, I think it was more helpful to speak with people who are on kind of in the same spot as me.
Yeah,
That way we could help each other. And then also, your book promotion starts way before you print your book,
yeah,
way before it publishes. You got to start talking about it,
yeah,
firing people up, telling people you're excited, building momentum, telling them that you have this great idea and that you're not an expert yet, but you're going to be. And as soon as you're an expert, you're going to publish a book and tell everyone about it.
well, you're an expert. I mean, if you're writing a book, you're an expert. You wouldn't be writing the book if you weren't an expert, right? Like, so I think a lot of people wait until they get published and then say they're an expert. Well, actually, the minute you make a decision that you've got enough information and enough stuff that you feel like will make a difference, and you make a decision to write, you're an expert in that moment. So I don't think
Sure.
you got to wait until you're holding the book in your hand to say I'm an expert.
Yeah, I can agree with that. But what I found though is that 12 years of working in the financial industry was not enough information for me to write the book. So I had plenty of ideas, but some of the best advice that I ever got was that it's not about what you know, it's about what you want to know. And the research that I did was huge. Like what I learned once I made that decision to start writing the book was amazing. So yes, if you got a great idea, you already know 1,000 times more than the average person. So yes, you could call yourself an expert. And if you've ever read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, I'm 4 times over an expert based on his 10,000 hour rule in finance. But I needed to do more research. So yeah, and I had to capitalize on the momentum to be excited to do that. So definitely would recommend that. And people, and the thing is, if you tell people I know everything, just something about that doesn't come off right. To me, it's I know a lot, but I want to know more, and I want to tell you everything I learn.
Yeah.
And then it gets them excited. I mean, the amount of people that pre-ordered my book was amazing. And I think a lot of it had to do with me saying, hey, listen, I got this really cool topic. If you're interested in it, you got to give me a few months and I'm going to learn everything about it and I'll get back to you. And they bought the book. And so if you're someone who's already published, you mentioned like kind of different stages. If you're someone who's already published, I would say what's really important is that you have to continue to keep that momentum going and let people know that you're still excited about this topic and that it's ever changing. It's still new.
Yeah.
It's something that we can still learn about, and it's never too late to start, right? Because if I tell people, well, I wrote my book a year ago, and if you haven't read it by now, you're behind, that they're never going to buy your book, right? They have to feel like this is something that they can start.
And it's always relevant. It's relevant now. It was relevant a year ago. It's relevant today.
Yes.
And I think that's a great point, Bob, because a lot of people, think, oh, I've had the book a year and I haven't sold that many now, so it's not going to be successful. Rubbish. Relaunch it. As Bob said, put some energy into it. Get some momentum going around it. There's so many things you can do these days. Whether it's media, whether it's social media, whether it's relaunching. You might have had a book for 5 years. Do a relaunch. You can do that. It doesn't matter and I'm sure the content is still very relevant. So that's so good. And the other thing you mentioned was, just be in contact with other authors. Well, accountability and that community is important. Bob, this
Absolutely.
video is going out to a group of people who are part of a community. We have a community. We run monthly forums, and so I would just say to people listening, if you're not coming to those monthly forums, I would recommend you do, because it's exactly that, mate. It's hanging around with other authors at varying stages, and I know new people come in and getting very, very inspired by some of the other people, and it's very powerful. So, mate, this has been so good. I really appreciate your time. I guess just to finish off, how do people reach out to you, and how do people find your book if they want to understand about how to, get clear money sorted in this sort of digital age? What's it called? Personal finance in a public world. How do they get their hands on it?
Yes. So you can buy it on all major platforms wherever you are across the world. If Amazon's probably the quickest way, you go to my author page, Bob De Pasquale, or just search personal finance in a public world. You can also go to my website, bobdepasquale.com, and there's a link to the book right there. You can find out how to contact me. If you have questions about the book and want to talk about it, I always love to talk with people as well. You can send me a DM on Twitter or Instagram.
That's awesome, mate. And as I said, stay tuned, because very shortly after this is released, and I know this video cast is going to be around for years and years, so it's going to be what I'm saying right now is going to be totally irrelevant. So, but there's the podcast that I do with Bob is coming out very shortly, and it's an incredibly inspiring one. So make sure you listen to that. Bob, mate, you're a champion. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your advice and your help, and keep up the amazing work.
Awesome, Andrew. Keep it up too, man. Thank you.